Been reporting on Fast and Furious for 6 years. That's right. Before we knew the name of the secret federal program to train Los Zetas at Fort Benning, Georgia, then have them engage in a fake defection, forming their own border drug cartel, Shelly Castile and many other sources here in Texas, Shelly Castile, of course, retired DEA agent, had said that a coming war over narcotics and the $500 billion coming in a year, most of it through Mexico, heroin and cocaine, that there would be a war over that $500 billion. And that, well, just 3 years ago, that Los Zetas had tried to recruit him to train people near the King Ranch down by Kingsville, Texas. And now it's all happened. And at first, ATF agents began to blow the whistle about the fact that they were basically ordering gun shops to let certain key people come in and buy masses of firearms to then take them into Mexico. Now we've learned, and this has come out in federal court in Chicago, it's been reported on by the Chicago Tribune and the El Paso Times. Of course, Paul Watson saw it in the Federal Record months ago before they even covered it. Proud of our work at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com. Now it has come out that indeed they were shipping the guns directly to the drug cartels, not just in Mexico, but in Miami, Florida, Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, California, and other cities. And how did all this happen? The rats began to bite at each other. The head of the ATF, 3 months ago, was caught perjuring himself before Congress, and ATF agents who he was hanging out to dry released the orders, the documents, the memos, and the emails ordering them to do this. He was trying to deny it. Then he came out and said, okay, I was ordered to by Eric Holder, the head of the Justice Department, the Attorney General. And then he said, here's more documents. Don't blame me. The FBI and DEA were involved. Well, now that's all mainstream news. DEA, FBI, ATF shipping guns to Honduras, to Mexico, and to drug gangs in major cities, major distribution points, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, and now it's coming out that the same thing was going on in areas of New Mexico, Texas. We're learning more every day. What a window into the fact that this federal government is gangster at the top and has put its gangsters in most of the high-level and mid-level positions and are now trying to purge good people. Now, it gives me some faith in America that we can still turn this around, that it was ATF agents, 5 of them, some of them mid-level, senior in their area, that said, we're not going to be part of this, and leaked the information and then went public. They were either fired or demoted. And, of course, it came out 2 weeks ago, as the Attorney General tries to cover this up, that the supervisors that blocked the information and threatened reprisals, they, of course, the LA Times reported, have now been given raises and elevated to the national level with cush desk jobs now. So, this is a criminal mafia that, A, wanted to get guns to cartels trained by the Pentagon to consolidate the flow of drugs into the United States through Mexico. And also out of Central and South America, we now learn. That's mainstream news. A month ago came out. Now, continuing. Domestically, it had the added goodie of blaming the Second Amendment. And I saw Holder 2 years ago saying, we've got to pass gun laws. We've got to ban assault weapons. We've got to restrict buying more than one gun because of the violence in Mexico. And then even after he got caught, he rolled out, as you know, about a month and a half ago, and went ahead and said, I don't need a stinking law. Congress wouldn't pass this law. They tried to pass it. So now in 4 states, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. Wait, is Nevada involved? Is it 5? No, it's 4. In those 4 states, they now outside of law, do whatever the ATF says. And they're going to people that go in and buy a high-powered rifle or buy 1,000 rounds of ammo. I see it in the news every day. They're then being ATF visited or even SWAT teamed. And I'll see it in the news. Man had 27 guns and 4,000 rounds of ammo. And they'll have neighbors saying, it's so frightening. And it's, you know, the retired veteran has been arrested. In fact, I was mailed one of these. Dew pointed it out to me this morning. The Orleans County Record out of Massachusetts, right up there on our northern border. And it says, firearms seized. And it says, ATF take guns from former police officer who has no criminal record, retired. He ran for sheriff, almost won but didn't win, Mr. Chiotti. And he's been a gun dealer for many years. That's why he quit being a cop, so he can make money and sell guns. He's a registered federal firearms dealer. And they say right here they confiscated his firearms, and they say there's no charges and that they're just taking them, and that's the end of it. So we're going to work on getting him on. It says above, Sergeant David Peterson, a member of the Vermont State Police Bomb Squad, left to assist U.S. alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agents at the home of the individual below. The home in St. Jonesbury below. A basket of firearms sits on the porch. Oh, there's a bucket of them, and there was a couple dozen rifles. My God, it's horrible. What am I supposed to do? I mean, I've got granddaddy's firearms. I've got firearms my dad bought me when I was a kid and a teenager. Got the first 410 shotgun he bought me. I've got the guns. I mean, am I evil? I've got thousands and thousands of rounds of ammo. That's how you buy it inexpensively, so you can target, shoot, and protect yourself. I mean, I see this all the time. Every couple days, it's almost always the same type of headline. And it's in Maryland, Illinois, California, even Florida, Texas. I see it everywhere. Neighbors saw Mr. Johnson, Mr. Brown, in his garage with a firearm and called police. And it's always the same. In some cases, it's gunsmiths. You got the old guy's wife's in there watching TV or cooking dinner. It's almost always a veteran, no criminal record. He can skin a buck. He can run a trot line. They almost always live in some rural subdivision. It's always just, you know, that type of person. And it's always the same story. They're seen, I've interviewed many of them, they're seen in their garage cleaning a rifle or working on one for a neighbor. And somebody walks their dogs, they see some guns lined up there in the little workshop, and they call the cops. Cops come, they go ahead and arrest them. They go ahead and take their guns. And in some cases, they go to jail. They call it an arsenal. And then I go look up the state law. There's no law. And you're like, well, how do they go to jail? Well, how are people getting 5-year, 12-year sentences or charged life in prison in Illinois for videotaping police on the public street? How do they take children every day for not taking vaccines? There's no law. How did the U.S. government sterilize 500,000 plus people up until the mid-1980s? Under the eugenics courts. They're not real courts. And they'll grab you off the street and cut your uterus out. Or lop your testicles off. People email me going, that's not what they did in sterilizations. Yes. Yes, they did it as medical experiments. They would have medical students come in generally from the 20s right through the 80s. I've interviewed the people. It's been all over the news. And they'll just lop it off. This is what America is, okay? Hardcore narcotics trafficking, gun dealing, child kidnapping, gangs of murderers that run the government. Right next to compartmentalized ATF, FBI, sheriff's deputies that are changing old ladies' tires and going to domestic disputes and going to horrible car wrecks and standing out in 110-degree heat radar gunning people to raise money for the system. And you've got totally, generally blind, well-meaning, break-their-back-for-America cops right next to their bosses who are narcotics trafficking killers. And everything with the New World Order is about hoaxes, and it's about compartmentalization. Now, here is the federal government caught. The head of the ATF is now resigned, as you know, and it is admitted that there's a giant cover-up. And this should impeach the president. This should impeach the attorney general. I mean, shipping guns all over this hemisphere. And we told you about it 6 years ago. We told you about it 2 years ago. Because we know how it works. Just like Our Marines and our Army troops in 9 years, almost 10 years in Afghanistan. It'll be 10 years in a couple of weeks. Some of them serving 4 or 5 tours. They began to write letters home. There was a big stink 2 years ago. We were pointing it out. Others were pointing it out that the troops are ordered to actually help grow the opium in Afghanistan. It went from less than 10% of world production to over 90% in just a few years, flooding the world with cheap heroin to get everybody addicted. The poppies that are then turned into the opium, then turned into the heroin, condensed into the heroin. And so what did they do? They just had BBC, ABC News, Fox News, CNN, all of them come out 2 years ago and then again a year ago and just make the troops line up in front of poppies and go, yes, we grow it, it's for America. And the troops were all looking weird. See, they just hide it in plain view. Okay, we're growing it. Move along. Because Pat Tillman was writing letters home. Troops were getting upset. We were getting calls about it. It was a big stink that they were just having the planes land, loading it on, telling the troops, get it on board, get the fertilizer. Troops are like, but you go to jail for this. They're like, never mind that, Sergeant. And there we go. We got a problem. The troops are ready to mutiny over this. They know we're here for the opium. And we're funding the terrorists as an excuse to stay here. They're like, just parade them all out in front of everybody, say we're doing it to fight Al-Qaeda. You think that's going to work, General? Absolutely. We've got to flaunt it in their face. We're going to defeat America. Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds?